Jessem versus Dowelmax, two of the top of the line doweling jigs on the market that you can buy, and I want to find out which one is the best and the best bang for the buck. I'm going to break this video down in 3 parts. Number 1, what do you get with each jig? Number 2, how do they perform on different joinery types? In other words, butt joints, miter joints, T-joints, anything like that. And number 3, I'll give you my overall opinion on which one I think is best for most people. So what do you get for the price of each jig? We'll do the Dowelmax first. For $225, give or take, the Dowelmax comes with what you see here. You're gonna get the 3/8" drill guides inserted. You're gonna get the clamps and everything like this. You're also gonna get all of these spacer blocks as well as positioning rod if you want to space out your dowels, as well as the positioning pin itself. You also get a 3/8" drill bit with a stop and the Allen key. This is the Jessem Master Kit. Now what do you get with the Master Kit? So for $249, you're getting the jig itself, the 3/8" drill guides already inserted. You're also getting the 3/8" drill bit and a positioning pin, as well as the stops on each bit and the Allen key. You're also getting with this kit a 1/2" drill guide as well as a 1/4" drill guide. And this kit costs $195 for this entire kit. Now, if you don't want the 1/4 or the 1/2 and you just want the 3/8" kit, then you can save a little money and get this for around $145 to $165, depending on the time or year or whatever sale they're having. At the time of this filming, it is $145. That is a really good deal, like a very good deal on a solid jig. Now the Dowelmax, you have to purchase the 1/4" drill guides extra. I don't think, if I'm not mistaken, they'd have a 1/2" option. So you could have a 1/4 and 3/8, but you can't get the bigger 1/2" option, whereas the Jessem has all 3. Now for the score for the first category, I'm going to give the Dowelmax a 3.5 fist bump out of 5 because you're getting that 3/8" drill guide. You got the clamp that's built in. I like that. I think it's a solid price for this jig. But I am going to give a slight edge, a 4.5 fist bump out of 5 to the Jessem, even at the $249 price point, because you're getting the 1/4" and 1/2" drill guides, whereas if you added that 1/4" drill guide to the Dowelmax, it's going to put it up there at almost $285, $290. So I do think that Jessem is a better deal because you're getting all of those in one. So the way the Dowelmax works, you're going to want to line up whichever 2 sides are going to be your front side or your face side, and you put a little check mark on there. And the reason you're going to do a check mark, or you can do an X or whatever you want, the Dowelmax has check marks on its equipment or on the manufactured pieces. So you got a check mark there, you got a check mark there. And what that's telling you is the check mark will go toward the check mark. And you're going to make sure that you put the top face to your check mark as well. So you're going to want to check mark those. And this is when you're assembling a bunch of stuff. You do not want to get them confused and mixed up. This will keep everything lined up precisely. So I know that that's my check. That's my check. I kind of think this looks like a boot, and I've said before, put a boot to the face. So you're going to make sure this stays toward the face of your work, and then also that check mark will line up with another check mark. There's check marks on both sides. So boot to the face and line those up. Now from here, you're just going to flush it up with, by feel. You just make sure that is perfectly flush right there, and then you'll tighten down those thumb screws to hold the board in place. Pretty simple. Now from there, you're going to want to make sure that you don't drill that hole. You can see where the board is halfway because it's a thinner board, but you can drill these 3 holes, and that's what we're going to do. Just ensure everything's flushed up. Now we want these 2 to match perfectly, so we're going to go back, make sure face, boot to the face, right? Flush up the top. Now setting up the Jessem is a little bit different because you have to kind of gauge where it's going to land inside your drilling area. This knob here will loosen, and then you can move this up and down. There are grooves under there that's going to catch it so you get a positive stop. but you're going to move those until you get it to the position you want. For me, it's going to be 3/8 of an inch, and then we'll tighten this down. One thing you do have to watch though is make sure they're both in the groove. Sometimes it kind of feels like it doesn't get seated just right, and that could throw things off. It moved on me. See, it went to half instead of 3/8. You just have to make sure it's good and seated. Now to set the jessem up for drilling like this butt joint or even the T-joint, there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can draw a center line on this board and then match it up to that one. So if we had, a line there that we were going to match up, this has a center line guide that you can line that up to the center line so you can ensure you're getting it exactly right. This is tapered down also so that it gets right next to your material that you're lining up. For a butt joint like this, just to make sure everything's nice and flush, all you really have to do is make sure you line up the edge of the drill guide with the top of the board, and then you can drill in from there. Now there's no clamp built into this one, so you're going to have to use your own squeeze clamp and or something similar. I'm going to use a face clamp. Just want to make sure everything's nice and flush. One thing to keep in mind is that you keep the faces the same. You can do a check mark, you can do whatever you want, or just lines or anything like that, so you know both of these are your face pieces, because if you flip them over, it could be slightly different from this side to this side as far as where your holes land. As far as setting these, it's very similar to the Dowelmax. I will note that the Dowelmax stops has 2 set pins, which I much prefer, because that lets you get a grip on both sides of the drill bit. You don't want to drill more than just over halfway or right at halfway of your dowel pin, similar to what we did or should have done with the Dowelmax. If you're connecting pieces like this, then you would need to worry about the depth here, but if you're connecting them like this, you really don't. You just need to make sure it's not too deep for your dowel pin. All right, if you put them together correctly, then you should get this nice flush joint here as well as on top. I actually messed up and aligned them to the wrong spot. So if you look on this end, if you try to line up the dowels, what's going to happen is they're off. So the way that gets off like that is basically I put the wrong side to the drill guide, put it this way. What that does is basically turns it over and it messes it up. So make sure that if you're this way, you can flip it over and it should still be right-ish. You can see, but your face will be on the wrong side. Also, this end looks like it's not flush right there, but this has a slight rounded over corner, but it fits perfectly. Nice and flush on all sides. Now, for the T-joint on the jessem, there's a couple of ways you can do this. The easiest way will be to lay out a line there so that we know that that's going to be our center line. So you've got your measurement and you know this is exactly where you want this to land. You're just going to scribe a line there. So you're just going to line up the center line with that line, clamp that, drill those holes, and do the same thing on this side. On the Dowelmax, if you're wanting to step down and put another set of holes there so that you can put like an apron on or another piece there, if you're building something like that, then what you need to do is mark where you want your hole, set our Dowelmax on there. Then you have this piece. This is a kind of a way to offset these holes exactly the same every time. And this works with that same Allen key that you got with your Dowelmax. Just loosen that up and then move that pin over until it touches. Say we want to make sure that it's precisely 4 inches or 5 inches. You can do that and set this once, and then you can continue the pattern. So if you need to put rails in every so many inches, that would work there. Then you would just tighten this up, drill your holes, and then it would match up to those. Another place this would be useful is if you're making tabletops and things like that, and you wanted these to align your pieces as well as keep them straight and flat. This is good for strength and, again, alignment, so your tabletop's going to come out flat, less sanding. How do you line these up? Well, simply use your jig to, remember, boot to the face. We're going to drill those holes. We need these to line up down here now. How we're going to do that? We're going to use our pin or our guide pin that comes with your Dowelmax. This is where this comes in useful. These pieces weren't jointed, so you may see a little bit of gap, but they fit perfect. All right, to get the jessem to do the same thing, so if we're building a tabletop here, we're going to have to mark a line down here and then line the jessem jig up to that line. As you see, got a center hole there. I'm going to transfer that And all you're doing is making sure that the CL center line lines up there, and then you're going to drill that hole. They also have these offset pins, so if you wanted to offset your holes from pin to pin is 3 inches. So if you just wanted to put a pin every 3 inches, you're going to use this offset pin, put that through your guide or your drill guide, and it's going to go right into the previous hole you drilled. And then you can drill this hole and just keep walking down your board for every 3 inches you want to do that. The Dowelmax has something very similar. It's the same or similar style pin, although the weight of this one is much heavier. This feels much lighter. So all you're going to do is drop that pin, same difference, down through those guide holes, and then you can walk them down just like that. The center on these, though, are about 2 3/4. You can see the hole spacing on the jessem is a little bit wider than that on the Dowelmax. So the Dowelmax has a tighter hole pattern. The jessem is a little more spaced out. Another neat feature of the jessem jig is you don't have to lay out those lines like we talked about earlier for the tabletop. All you have to do is get one of those in place. In other words, this dowel is already there. So all you have to do is clamp these 2 boards in place now, and then everywhere you have a dowel, all you have to do is slide it on that pin. Face piece will go against the board and square it up, and then you'll drill the hole. Then you can move it to the next one, do the exact same thing, and that will make it extremely fast if you're building a tabletop. I like that. This will also work if you're building shelves or something like that, and you need to dowel that in like that just to make a shelf. What's great about this is this hole is exactly 2 inches from the face or the end of the jig. So if you're building like you want to put this, you want these 2 pieces to line up exactly, all you're going to do is mark the line at 2 inches up from where you want the shelf to be, and then you're going to center this up. And once you get everything lined up, I would just clamp this board here, move this into position, drill your hole or drill 2 holes, and then you would have this exactly where you need it to go. One excellent use for dowels is miters. So if you're building picture frames, boxes, anything like that, this just is a good way to join this together without having to worry about it coming apart later. Good strength, and they just work well. And they're hidden, so it just makes everything look really nice. The Dowelmax, I like how it works on miters. I've built picture frames with this before. You're just gonna make sure that the boot goes to the face again, or the check mark to the face. I like to line it up to the inside of that. You can also do the outside of that if you want. That's probably the easier way. Tighten your jig down and drill your holes. You don't want to drill through the top one because you can see what's going to happen. It's going to bust through. I like to start at the bottom, get me 2 or 3 in there. Look at that. That's nice. Clamp that. That's going to come out super nice. Check that out. That's super easy to do too. That's quick and fast, nice little miter. I would likely put 1 more in there just to be safe, because you can see 1 more would not pop through. That's probably what I would do if I was making a picture frame out of that size board. Doing miters on the jessem, you can see it come out extremely nice. Everything's nice and tight, especially if you glued that up, clamped it up, and glued it up. It's going to be a nice tight joint all the way around. I really like that. It come out really good. This is a really good way to do it. I thought that the Dowelmax was a little bit easier to put on and get set up correctly, but the jessem worked extremely well also. It's just a little awkward to get this perfectly positioned and then clamp it, holding it perfect so that you don't mess that miter up, because if you're off a little bit, it's going to throw it off at the top and the bottom, obviously. So we don't always work with 3/4 inch stock. Sometimes you have a big 8/4 piece of walnut you want to dowel into, or 4x4s or anything like that. Both of these jigs are extremely adjustable and will adjust over each of these parts. They will also allow you to offset each of those dowels. In other words, like I did in my workbench, where I did use the Dowelmax to offset those legs or the aprons on the legs to give it a little more detail. A lot of furniture has that, and you're going to want to do that for various reasons. So for the Dowelmax, that's where these spacer bars come into play that I showed you earlier, and you can do various sizes of those. This one is a 3/8, and it's super easy. You just drop it in, and then you'll tighten this side down. For the back side, the reason you have such long screws on the back side of this thing is so that you can slide this out. It's going to give you more clamping capacity, but if you just tighten down now, it has a tendency to flex, and so they do give you the spacers for the other side as well. That's just going to make everything nice and strong while you drill your dowel holes. From there, I tighten the jig down, I drill my holes. As long as everything's lined up, you put the face to the check and then drill your holes, and then when you drill the holes, those will be offset on this piece. On your other piece, then you would want to take this spacer out and drill them normally. The jessem, I think, is much more expandable. As you can see, you have a bunch of room. You can basically move this and put this as far away as you could possibly get it, which is about 3.5 inches from the edge where you're clamping this to it. You could take this off and then clamp it flat if you needed to do that as well. So if you're doing shelves and things like that. As far as the offset goes, you're just gonna move the jig with the adjustable lines there to figure out exactly how far you want the offset to be, and it's super easy to do. As far as getting offsets on the jessem, then all you would do is just adjust this in or out to find the exact spot you want to put your apron. As far as ease of use goes for the butt joint like this, it was very easy to use. The Dowelmax, it's just super simple. It's very difficult to mess up so long as you put the boot to the face and do it correctly. The jessem was super simple too. You line everything up. As long as you're putting the correct face to the jig, then everything should line up correctly. If you don't, then it comes out wrong. But the Dowelmax does the same thing. I'm gonna give it a tie here at about a 4 out of 5 on each one. As far as tabletop-like joinery, in other words, putting two pieces together like this, I'm gonna give a slight edge to the jessem. We'll give it a 4 out of 5. We'll give the Dowelmax a 3.5 out of 5. The reason why is when you take the base plate off, I really like how it has that slip joint where you can line those up if you're clamping those two boards together. So if I'm building a tabletop, I can do that pretty fast. It's very similar to like a domino would use, how you can set those up on the tabletop. The Dowelmax works extremely well. Also, don't get me wrong, I really like this jig. I just think the Dowelmax in that application works a little better. As far as the miter joint goes, the clear winner, in my opinion, is the Dowelmax. It is extremely easy to set up and use on miters. I would highly recommend the Dowelmax if you do a lot of miters because everything lines up very easily and very fast. Where the jessem is a little slower to do, you have to actually really make sure that you're getting it dialed just right. And the Dowelmax just seems simpler and easier to set up in that application, in my opinion. So I'm gonna give the Dowelmax a 4.5 out of 5 there because it's really easy. I'll give the jessem 3.5 out of 5 fist bumps. For the T-joints, I really give this a tie. I don't think it's very difficult to do either one with both of those. I'm gonna give them both 4 out of 5s. Can they be better? Yeah, that's why I don't give them 5 out of 5. But I really like how you can use the positioning pins or the rod. I really like the rod. May give it a quarter fist bump just for the rod that the Dowelmax comes in. You can space those out exactly just using the rod. It makes it a little faster. We'll give it a little edge up now that I think about it. But they're very, very close in how they work. Now, as far as putting shelves on something like I did with the jessem, like I was showing you how to set that up, it slips right in there. It works extremely well. I'm gonna give it a very strong edge over the Dowelmax. I think it just works better in that application. The Dowelmax does have an accessory you can buy. It's a right angle accessory that allows you to do that a lot easier, but it's an add-on that you have to buy where the jessem you don't. So jessem gets 4.5 out of 5. The Dowelmax gets 3.5 out of 5. Take this with an absolute grain of salt because I know nothing about aluminum as far as the construction and the weight of it. All I know is the jessem feels heavier. It's a heavier gauge metal is what I'm assuming, denser feeling, whereas the Dowelmax, the aluminum on it feels a little lighter weight. Now I've used this for over a year and have zero issues with it. Nothing is bent, nothing is broken, nothing has dented. It's an extremely good metal. It's gonna last you probably a lifetime. Extremely nice. But the jessem does feel a little bit heavier weight. And I'm not sure what that is, especially like the guide pin was quite a bit lighter on the Dowelmax than the jessem. Build quality though, the way everything works, I think it's a tie. They both are very well made. They're both made in Canada and just extremely good pieces of equipment to have in your shop. One thing I will give the Dowelmax credit for as far as ease of use is the built-in clamp. It makes it so much faster than having to fool with trying to clamp this in place at the exact right spot, especially on miters. And then when you just need to get it there, sometimes it's kind of awkward to clamp this in place with another hand, where this is you set it on there, squeeze these down, and you drill. It's super simple. I've got to give this a 4.5 out of 5 in that aspect as far as clamping where the jessem, I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5. It needs a way to clamp easier. However, with this not having the built-in clamp, you do get more capacity there where you can slide this out over a wider piece. I do like that. So maybe 3.5 is a little harsh. 4, we'll give it a 4. Bang for the buck, I'm going to give 4.5 out of 5 to jessem and a 3 out of 5 to Dowelmax. Now Dowelmax does include the built-in clamp and things like that, but the jessem comes with the half as well as the 1/4-inch drill guide bushings as well as drill bits. I like that because on the 1/4-inch, say you're building smaller picture frames, things like that, more smaller pieces of wood or more smaller projects, you're gonna want the smaller 1/4-inch dowels. On bigger pieces of wood, such as my workbench here, I use 3/8-inch dowels, but a 1/2 inch would have been better on beefier places. So I really like the fact that jessem includes those. So it really does get the top rating there. Speaking of accessories though, Dowelmax does offer a couple of extra accessories that I haven't seen with the jessem. This is a 45-degree plate. So if you didn't want to do miters like that, but you wanted to do them face-to-face like this, then you would need this piece to help you set up with the Dowelmax to get those exactly on 45 every time. Makes it much easier when you're doing this type of miter. Also, Dowelmax offers this little set tool where you can set your drill bit depth with their little handy accessory. This is very convenient to have, just being able to set your dowel depth. But again, it's an add-on, you buy extra. As you can see, both of these are extremely nice jigs. I don't think you'll be disappointed with either one of them. They're both the top of the line doweling jigs on the market in my opinion. They both have their pros and cons as we pointed out, but I think you'll enjoy either one of them. I'll put a link in the description below and in the pinned comment if you want to go check them out for yourself. In the meantime, you need to check out that video right there where we tested parallel clamps. I put them through a torturous test to see which one come out on top. You'll be surprised. Click that box, clicking the box gets you the big old virtual fist bump. Also, another one of my favorite videos right there.